So this is such a weird release from Firaxis. I love their more experimental side things, and the fact that this is standalone, releasing on Friday, and also that it's $10. And I think like once May 1st hits, then it shifts over to $20. We talked about it, I think, on last week's episode of the podcast. But it's a cool standalone, funky experience. But Adam, what do you think about it so far?
It's good. You know, it's very much more XCOM in some ways, but it's clearly been designed by people who have played the hell out of it and who understand the game on a really deep level and understand what makes it fun and how different that still feels like XCOM, but has some different things to it and really focuses in on some of, not all of the things that XCOM 2 do really well, but some of the things that it does really well and kind of expand on those things.
Yeah, it's a weird thing where just playing it is like, oh, this seems like an interesting game for fans of XCOM and maybe fans of visual novels, which is not, two bubbles that I imagined overlapping. But like the fact that they're emphasizing story more, these characters, is like, I don't think I want that from my XCOM. But at the same time, it's like, well, they've released several XCOM games at this point. Let them experiment. And like the writing is solid. I think it's like fun, and they're trying to play up these characters' personalities a little bit more. Although Adam is grimacing out of the gate.
Solid is not the adjective I would describe. Use to describe the writing. I mean, it's fine. Like, it doesn't actively offend me, but I mean, I don't know. The story is, as always, sort of in the world and in the sort of character of the aliens that you're dealing with, and now that you have on your squad and stuff like that. And sort of the look and feel of the world is all really cool. I don't want to offend anybody who worked on the game or anything, but man, yeah.
It's just not for you. Yeah. Well, you're in it for the gameplay. Yeah. And how do you feel like the gameplay changes have escalated or changed XCOM overall?
So there's really the big huge thing, two big huge things. One, you have, instead of one big map where you're sort of moving from this area and then you run into some aliens and you deal with them, and then you run into this other patrol and you deal with them, and then you get to the door that you have to get through to get to the. Instead of doing that, you proceed through discrete encounters, right? And so you'll have, maybe a mission will be 1 to 3 encounters is what I've seen so far. And each one of those is a really constrained small map with a bespoke map on it, right? And like different, set start positions for the aliens and stuff like that. And so they're kind of smaller, tighter tactical puzzles almost that remind me of, more than anything, of Into the Breach, actually.
Oh, interesting.
If anybody remembers that from the FTL guys, subset games. Into the Breach, game of the year for me, whatever the hell year that was. But this feels the same sort of, has the same sort of thing where you're trying to knock out enemies before their turn comes up, because it's not I go, you go. It's an actual turn order this time per unit. It's all my guys go and then all your guys go.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to, and you can see where people show up on the turn order. So you're trying to knock out the enemies or disable them or kill them or whatever before their turn comes up to really minimize the incoming damage that you have. So that's interesting. The breach mechanic is awesome. The breach mechanic, like everybody hated in XCOM, not everybody, but a lot of people hated in XCOM, where you're going around the map and you step over the invisible fence and then boogly, here's 6 aliens that, oh God, where did they come from? I had no idea, right?
Right.
That kind of always felt crappy. It always kind of felt like you were getting ambushed. Well, you get to be the ambush guy now, right? Like,
it's nothing but ambush.
It's awesome. It's awesome. It's super fun. It feels really good. Like, it makes you feel really awesome when you drop 2 faceless before combat even starts, right? Like, and you get different breach abilities and stuff like that. That all works incredibly well, in my opinion. The second thing that's really different from sort of, we'll call it classic Firaxis XCOM, and there's going to be some nerds who are all about, hating on the Firaxis XCOM, and we don't need to worry about them. But anyway, is the fact that you have actual agents with, instead of just generic dudes or ladies, with classes, sniper and shotgun dude, and I don't know whatever else there was, assault rifle dude, whatever. Yeah. You have actual agents that have, backstories, which again kind of suck, whatever, who cares? But more importantly, they have special abilities. First time I got a Viper on my squad, and I used a tongue pole to grab a hostage and get the hostage out of harm's way and complete a mission that was looking dicey. Like, that was really cool. It's really cool to use those abilities to solve things a little bit more creatively, because in XCOM 2, particularly in the early game, you have a pretty small number of tools in your toolbox in terms of just what you can do, right? You flank dudes, you throw grenades to create some cover. Here you have a lot more things that you can do, and that tongue pull is just one example.
I saw Jake Solomon tweet. He said, "Hey, when I designed the Viper in XCOM 2, I truly had no idea that there was a quote-unquote thing for female human-snake hybrids. What a world. I don't mind. I'm not on this earth to play goalie. I just had no idea." Apparently there's
Rule 34, right?
Yes, a big community for those Vipers in XCOM 2, which, hey, teach their own. What are you going to do? Surreal, do you like it so far?
I think it feels a little bit more of an XCOM made for me in that I wasn't as big of a fan of like between missions, you're kind of like you're basically trying not to paint yourself into a corner through the campaign stuff of, hey, you need to manage kind of an economy effectively between missions and like your soldiers and stuff. And here, that a lot of that is very minor, where you're sort of just picking which upgrades you want to give your soldiers and like where you want to assign certain people to go like do research and, make kind of like do like spec ops deals where they're kind of like infiltrating areas without like it being a combat thing.
Yeah, it's a timer.
And there's less management of like, you can set when you start a campaign, you can set it so that your characters heal completely between missions instead of like, hey, you have to manage your character's health over the long term,
which is pretty wild. Yeah.
And so I like the kind of smaller, more puzzly encounters, and especially like Adam said, I like that when you are the ambusher in a lot of cases. That said, I think that like I don't know that I'm going to be able to get over like the long term thing of, hey, this guy's like right next to me and I have a 56% chance of hitting them, and then like I spend like 4 turns trying to get this one guy down, and in the meantime, like it's either that or I figure out like a different way to approach the encounter. But just like random rolls always are kind of finicky with me. But I'm also like not super into the story. It seems like okay, it's passable, but I think what a lot of people liked from those XCOM games were kind of making their own stories,
right?
And so this definitely feels like let's make an XCOM for people who kind of had any sorts of complaints with the XCOM with our XCOM games. But I don't know that the story they're telling here so far feels like a good replacement for like, hey, I've decided to make, an XCOM group made out of all of my friends, and I'm gonna tell this like kind of improv D&D story.
I hear you, and I definitely prefer that too. But at the same time, it is that feeling of like, well, I've already done that several times. Sure. Like I'm interested to see what their take is. And like the world, I think is interesting, like evolving from, I think it's like 5 years after XCOM 2, and the day that, aliens, humans living together, there's also hybrids. And then like it gives a good opportunity for different storylines to pop up. Like the first, you get an option early on about which thing you want to investigate, which path you want to go down out of the gate. And one of them's like, okay, there's this religious sect called the Sacred Coil that are obsessed with the true vision for how human-alien hybrids should exist and stuff. It's like, okay, that's enough of a framing where I'm a little bit intrigued about what this world is like in these days, even though I wasn't, reading XCOM books in my free time or anything like that. I don't know. I'm still
Maybe you should have been.
I really should. I'm trying to get a sense of to what extent this is, and it's not on the extreme end of being like the Civ Rev, but I'm trying to get a sense of, do you think it is a streamlining of XCOM overall? Do you think it is them trying to reach a different mass audience with a different art style and this smaller, cheaper package?
I think it definitely, like, you could make an argument that this feels more like a mobile game in that it takes place in more smaller, discrete chunks. It doesn't have the giant maps that you have to worry about loading into and loading out of and being able to sit down for 45 minutes to play through this map, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily bad. Like I said, I think it focuses on some things and lets some other things sort of fall away. And what you like about XCOM or don't like about XCOM, personally, I think that's going to inform how you feel about Chimera Squad.
I was impressed by Chimera Squad. I was like, oh, I'm curious to try it out, but I don't know if I'm going to stick with it. But I had a better time in those first, in the first hour and a half than I expected. And like, I think it looks better than I was expecting to. And it's like, I think I'm going to stick with it. I think it's an interesting release overall.
I feel like they definitely smoothed off some of the jankier edges of the graphics and sort of the transitions between animations and stuff like that. You still occasionally get a dude going like, and then the bullets go out that way, right? Because they didn't line up the gun, right? But it's once in a while, right? It's a lot smoother of a presentation, in my opinion. They really did some work to kind of get that a little bit more nailed down.
Yeah. Do you have any?
Yeah, I think it's good.
If you enjoyed this clip from the MinnMax Show podcast, we think you'll like the full show too. You can find it by subscribing to MinnMax's YouTube channel or on your favorite podcast app. Any help spreading the word to keep our whole indie operation here running is appreciated. We're here for and because of the wonderful MinnMax community, so you're welcome to join.